So I'm just making. Sumit, can you see the recording has been started? Yeah.
Yeah, I can see the mark. Yeah. So still waiting for other participants to join. I see the count is getting increased. So we'll give them some time more.
Just to confirm, the name of the group is it Kochi? Is that right?
Yeah, Kochi is a city in
Okay.
India. Yeah.
Then.
Okay, so we'll give 2 3 minutes more and then we can start.
Sure. Typically, whenever you have events, is it usually on a weekend or a weekday? You usually have
Weekend, Saturdays.
weekend. All
Six.
right, so more or less same time then.
Sumit, let's get started. I guess start sharing, and it's almost
Yeah,
6:30.
let's start at 12:08. Let's give 2 minutes more. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, someone please confirm from Joey and Sophia if my screen is visible.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so first of all, a warm welcome to every one of you. Good morning, good afternoon. So thanks for all your precious time that you've taken out from this Saturday. So today's topic is Mulesoft Composer, which is connecting systems without code. So Joey is one of the expert from Salesforce in Mulesoft, so he's going to walk us through for this hot topic, Mulesoft Composer. This is a safe harbor statement. So like with this we are letting you know that the speakers and the host are organizing this meetup in our individual capacity only. We are not representing any organization here, and these presentations and events are strictly for learning purpose only. And we are not saying that this will be directly used in your business requirements or solutions. And also, this presentation and event is not meant for any promotional activities. So these are just safe harbor statements. And in terms of housekeeping, like as Supriya already mentioned, a recording of this meetup, including PPT and the video, which will get uploaded to the event page within next 24 hours. And like throughout the session, if anyone has any questions or query, you can just paste your question in the chat Q&A section chat window. It will be easy for us to locate from that window because it's meant for that only, Q&A window. And try to just make it more interactive. And lastly, in the end, like we would like to hear the feedback from you guys, because like you wanna help us to help you from the next time. Because if you see any, if you have any suggestions or feedbacks, please do fill the feedback form, which will be emailed to you in your email IDs, like after the session. So I hope you will enjoy the session. um, we three are the organizers for Kochi. Sandeep is unfortunately not there today. He is busy in some training. And Supriya, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, Sumit. Thank you, first of all, everybody joining on Saturday morning. I know how tough it is, and I'm a Kochi Mulesoft meetup leader, as you guys can see on the screen, and I have 9+ years of experience in dealing with integration technology, and I'm a certified architect, developer, etc. I've completed delivery championship as well. And good to see you, people. And thank you so much for joining. And yeah, Sumit, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Supriya. So myself, Sumit Ahuja, I have total 7+ of years of experience in integrations in API technology. So I work as an integration architect in Johnson and Johnson Technologies in Singapore. So with this, we have today's speaker as Joey Chen. He's from Philippines, and just the way we have ambassador tag in MuleSoft, so in Salesforce also we have MVP tag, which is the highest tag. So we are blessed that we are. It's been a very pleasure to have Joey in our coaching meetup on to present on something. So yeah, over to you, Joey.
Thank you, Sumit and Supriya. First of all, appreciate that intro. You'll probably just need to stop sharing.
Yeah.
So thank you again for having me. So it's actually a privilege. Thank you for those that are spending their weekends here, and for those that will be watching the recording. So hope you enjoy. So I'm here to talk to you today about how you can connect system without code using Mulesoft Composer. So just a quick introduction. So I am Joey Chan. I'm a Salesforce MVP. So it's basically equivalent to the Mulesoft ambassador, and I'm also a MuleSoft mentor. So I'm the founder and technical architect at Cloud Jedi Solutions, based in Hong Kong, but the team is based in the Philippines. We're also number one rated in the App Exchange, and I'm actually 26 times Salesforce certified and 3 times MuleSoft certified. I've actually gone through the automation go-to-market champion recently. And then I also lead the community group in the Philippines for the admin. And I'm actually one of the organizers for Philippines Dreamin' and Southeast Asia Dreamin'. These are basically Salesforce conferences focusing on Salesforce technologies. So first of all, what is the problem for businesses right now, right? So the main thing right now, especially now with 2023, there's so much demands from the businesses in terms of automation, in terms of integration with different SaaS application. In many cases, yeah, each business would actually be using multiple different SaaS applications. And the question is, what do we do in order to integrate all of those different systems, right? They have different requirements in terms of analytics, mobile applications, other cloud-based applications, right? The problem there is we only have so much delivery capacity. It's not really feasible for companies to keep on hiring more IT personnel just in order to keep up with all of the demand, right? So with all of these demand going up, and the question is, how do we then address that? This is what we call the transformation delivery gap. How do we address this specific demand curve while still maintaining the same delivery capacity? In terms of the numbers based on surveys, 82% of businesses teams say that they actually need easy access to data and IT capabilities. But only 37% of organizations say they have the technology and skills to keep pace. The main thing in order to address this is actually how can we empower the business teams and the non-technical people to actually access all of these information on their own, right? So that actually brings us to the Salesforce solutions. So for those that are familiar, we have on the left side, it's basically the flow builder. So this is actually a no-code tool to allow business users, specifically admins, to be or developer, even developers, to actually build automations directly within Salesforce platform. So meaning if the data is actually residing within Salesforce, these are some of the tools that can be used, right? But what if we need to connect with third-party systems? The thing is, we actually need another tool, which is what we'll be talking about today, which is Mulesoft Composer, to be able to interact and orchestrate different interactions. So that could mean we could be connecting to a Salesforce org. It can be connecting to, let's say, a Google Sheet, other systems like Slack, Jira, Box.com, ServiceNow. So all of these are the supported connectors that we currently have. So the question is, what is MuleSoft Composer? So similar to Salesforce Flows, it's actually a no-code tool designed for business users and admins to be able to create simple integrations on their own without having to rely on the IT or having to rely on developers to be able to create that integration. So I'll actually be talking a bit more about some of the use cases later in some demo. But for now, the question is, who is it targeted towards, right? In a sense, MuleSoft, many of you may be MuleSoft developers or architects, but the main target audience is actually not you for this specific product. They're actually meant for the functional people that want to be able to create these integrations on their own, right? But why should you still listen to this presentation, right? It's very important to actually understand the consideration whenever you're building integration, especially in terms of governance and how you actually make it accessible, make your APIs accessible into MuleSoft Composer. So it's actually targeted toward administrator for the most part, right? There's actually two different products for MuleSoft Composer. One is a standalone MuleSoft Composer, meaning non-Salesforce customers can actually purchase it independently. The other option is buying MuleSoft Composer for Salesforce, which is what we'll be going through later as a demo. So meaning it's a version that's embedded within the Salesforce platform, meaning you actually access that through the Salesforce user interface. So for Salesforce admins, the main goal here really is instead of being tied up, because traditionally, whenever there's a requirement for automation and it comes to a point wherein there's that part of where we need integrations, this usually becomes something that we need a developer for. But the MuleSoft Composer really empowers the admins to be able to create these simple integrations on their own and even orchestrate that, right? So you can create multiple steps, one connecting to, let's say, NetSuite, one connecting to Slack, one connecting to Twilio. So there's actually a lot of these capabilities. How about architects, right? Both MuleSoft and Salesforce architects actually need to understand what are the capabilities, because at the end of the day, there's so much demand in IT, right? So the question is, if we can actually empower businesses or business users to actually create automations on their own through integrations, it's something that we should empower. That way we can lessen the load on our technical team, right? Even Salesforce developers can benefit from this, because rather than creating Apex or code to third-party systems, we now have this tool wherein it could be Salesforce developers creating the first integration and then have it managed by the business users, right? Marketers can actually benefit from this because we actually have connectors to Marketing Cloud, for example. We could be getting data from, let's say, NetSuite. Whenever a record gets created or updated, we can send that automatically to Marketing Cloud. So for consultants, this is something also very important to consider. It's basically another tool in the toolbox. in terms of solving business problems, right? So whenever possible, if there's something that you can use a no-code solution for, you should definitely consider it first, unless there's a really good reason why code should be used, right? So it's one of those things that we should, as good consultants, be able to determine. So for today, I'll be going through a quick demo of how it can be used. So in terms of this specific demo, we're actually dealing with a birthday notification. So imagine we have a high value client and it's actually checking for birthday notification, right? So let's say today, assuming today is the birthday of that specific high value client, we want to be able to send automated messages to the AE in order to for them to prepare a nice gift. And then we also want to be able to automate the greeting by SMS using Twilio to the client if they actually have a mobile phone on their contact record in Salesforce. So I'll go ahead and go through the demo now, and then we'll go through the rest of the slides later. So first off, we'll be talking about the setup, right? So in Sales, this is actually how Salesforce looks like. In this specific case, I actually created a contact with my name on it, with the date, birthday of today's date. I just put January 7, and then specific year. And then on top of this, this is actually a standard field. But on top of this, I also created a custom field in Salesforce to indicate is it the person's birthday. So within the object manager, I'll go to the contact. I created a new field name is birthday. So basically, all it's checking is the month and the year to determine if today is the contact's birthday. So you'll see here is a simple formula field. It's checking the year and the month and checking if it's month and the day and checking if it's matching today, right? So with that, I'll just do a quick query just to give you an idea on what data that we have. So within Salesforce, this is what we call a SOQL query. This is basically similar to SQL. So we're getting these information from the contact. And right now, we only have one record whose birthday is today. So we'll be using this as a part of our demo. So with that, this is how things looks like. Basically, as soon as you log into Salesforce, let's say if a company buys Mulesoft Composer, what happens in the background is that Mulesoft, a new Mulesoft Composer instance is actually created in the background. This Mulesoft Composer instance is actually based on, it's running on top of the Anypoint platform, and it's actually using Cloud Hub 2.0. And it's something that we cannot directly access for those that are interested in looking in the back end. It's something that we don't have direct access to. But what this allows users to do is basically a simple way for business users to be able to create integrations, right? So we have in the homepage some introduction to Composer and some relevant links in terms of being able to go through Trailhead trainings, documentation, especially the Trailblazer community where we can actually ask questions about Composer. So on this side, we actually have different templates that we can use in order to speed up the creation of Composer. You'll notice that there's actually not too many templates right now, but I believe Salesforce and Mulesoft is actually working on creating more templates for these. Basically, it's a quick way to create integration for apps like Jira, uh, be able to create integration with NetSuite. So it's one option that you can do. But for our purposes, we're actually going to start from scratch. We'll create, in this tab, we'll create a new flow. One thing to consider here is, remember, it's actually creating a new instance in the background, right? If I were to right click on this and view frame source, you'll notice that it's actually a frame that's using this is an instance, right? So it's in EU1 composer.mulesoft.com. So basically, everything that we do here is actually something that's let me check what that meant. All right, there you go. So basically, whenever we create a new flow, we have different options. We can either trigger it based on a system event or a specific schedule. So if for those that are familiar with cron, it's something similar. We can actually predefine how often it runs, or we could either use a system event, meaning there's something that could happen in, let's say, Salesforce. It can be either this specific Salesforce instance or some other org. But for example, for our purposes, we'll start with a schedule trigger. So in this case, we'll go with scheduler, and we want this specific process to run every day. Remember, we want to be able to determine which contacts have a birthday for the day. So every day we want this to run. And then from here, we have different actions, right? We can use the if else or for each. We have then the option of going through the system action. And then in this specific case, we'll select Salesforce. One very important thing to take note is we can actually connect to multiple different Salesforce connections, not just this specific org that we're currently working with. But at least for our demo, we're going to simplify it. We'll just connect to this specific org that we have. And then we'll tell it, I want to get all of the contacts that have a birthday of the day. In this case, we can either create a new record, update, delete, or even work with binary files. For this case, we'll want to go to the contact, and then we'll want to find um, the contacts that meet a specific criteria. So we want to check that his birthday is true. And we also want to get those with mobile phones. Yes, not empty, right? And then as a best practice, we have the option of actually only selecting the specific fields that we need. Rather than selecting all 90 fields, we'll go ahead and select the fields that we need. So we'll select, let's say, ID, contact ID, names. It'll go ahead and grab all of the names that we have. Let's also grab the mobile phone and the birthday. We'll grab the actual birthday and his birthday. So I'll hit apply. And then as a best practice, usually we try to save things whenever we can. So the demo, in this birthday demo, Uchi. And then I'll just do a quick test just to make sure this is working well. Go ahead and test. Take note, this is taking a while because it's all running in the endpoint platform. It's now processing it and then starting the test process. The nice thing about this is as you test things, it can actually show you the different outputs. So in this case, it actually got one specific record, it's record 1 of 1, and it actually successfully got the record that I wanted, right? So this is a sample of the query, is birthday is true, and mobile phone not equal to null. So this is the query that we have. And then you'll see here on the right, it's actually able to process 1. Now the question is, what do we then do with the data that we get, right? First off is we have different options here. You'll notice we only have this for each block. The reason for this is in this specific query, even though we only have 1 record, it's actually given us a list of records. It's basically a collection of records. So in this case, we just have to select the list of contacts. And one very important thing to take note, there's actually 2 plus signs here. It's very important to distinguish this. So this plus sign is actually is the action that we want to run on each of the contacts that we get. This one is actually after this specific full for each item runs, right? In this case, we want to go through each of the contacts that have a birthday of the day. So we'll select this first one. It's actually a common issue that many face, so something to take note of. So for each of the contact, what do we want to do? So for the first part, we want to be able to send a notification to the AE. For example, we'll use Slack as a notification. We'll use Slack here. And then I've actually already connected Slack, my Slack connection here. All you have to do is basically log in. So we won't go through that. I'll just select this one. And then from here, we have different options. You can either get a user by email, post a message to a channel, or send a DM, right? In this case, I'll just go ahead and select the DM. And then from here, we have different options. I'll just go ahead and select the pick from a list and then actually use my own user. Here, I'll send a quick message. And then this is something very important. So in this case, we're able to create an expression. So I can actually just hard code have send a birth send a birthday gift to or the name of the client, right? But the nice thing about this, we can actually use a custom expression for this. So for those that are familiar with data weave, a lot of the functions here are quite similar. It's basically using a subset of the functions that we have in data weave. So what we can do is we can tell the AE, hey, send a birthday gift to our birthday celebrant. So we'll want to use the data from the query. So we could use the full name. So it's basically like a merge field, right? So we can also use string functions. So let's say we want to use uppercase here. We could move this and then put it here. Send uh, the nice birthday gift to. And then I'll just add this one so that we can distinguish it from other tests. From here, we can hit apply. We don't even need to input any details on the bot name and the icon. So we'll go ahead and save, and we'll just do a quick test from here. So assuming this is successful, it will then send a quick direct message to myself and with this specific message. So it's now processing. So it's the test finished. We'll notice that we have a check marks here and we have this channel ID. And when we check the Slack app, we actually now have this message, right? So there's so many ways you can use this, but how else can we expand on this, right? We also want in our test to be able to send a quick message using SMS. So I'll just go ahead and edit this. And we can actually keep on adding more functionality to the specific flow. All I have to do is click on this one. And then what's the next action that we want to take? In this case, I'd want to send a message using Twilio. And then I've actually already connected this one. So all you have to do is get the account SID and token. So for those that are not familiar with Twilio, it's basically a platform that allows you to send text messages or phone calls. So for our purposes, I've actually already added the account SID and the token. One very important thing to get is I'll actually be using this specific phone number later to be able to send a message. So all you have to do is get this ID and token. The nice thing about Twilio is if you actually want to be able to play around with this, they actually have some credits that you can use. But the nice thing about this is if you actually want to be able to use it, it actually only costs $1 per month to be able to get a US-based phone number. And if you want to either send a text message or call a specific US-based phone number, it only costs 1 cent 1 cent per minute and 1 cent per text message. So for this, I'll just go back and just select the Twilio account that I've already created. And then from here, as mentioned, we can either make a phone call or send a message. In this case, I'll just go ahead and send a message. As the to field, remember we pulled the mobile phone number from the contact, right? So we'll just go ahead and select that. And then from the from field, we'll actually be using the from number that I got from here. This is the phone number that I have from Twilio. And then for the message text, similar to what we have earlier, we'll want to greet the actual recipient, right? Happy birthday, and then we'll just use the first name. Type first name. Hope you have a great day. And then I'll just add Gucci here. Wait for the valid syntax, and then I'll go ahead hit apply. We don't actually need to validate the media URL. Make sure to save it, and then go ahead and test it out. More or less, you've seen a sample of how easy it is to create integrations, right? Um, I'll just go through some of the other capabilities that we have after this. So it's now processing. Let's just wait for it to finish. So because we did another test here, so you'll see there should be a second message here with the same one. And on top of that, I now have received this specific message. So happy birthday, Joey. Hope you have a great day ahead. We have this coach here, right? So more or less, you've seen how fast it is to actually create these integrations with different services. And you've seen some of the capabilities. Just something quick. It's very important to understand whenever we're testing, I believe it's actually not counting any of the usage. So whenever a company uses Mulesoft Composer, we actually have credit-based system, meaning a company is going to buy a certain number of credits to be used, and each task, meaning each item here, is actually as counted as one task. So there are different conversions that I'll be talking about in terms of how these are being used. And then from here, um, every month, a company can see how much they've used. One thing to take note is only showing you actually the different flows monthly. So it is not something that you can see real time. So you'll see here the monthly summary usage report is usually available 5 business days after the month close, meaning whatever it is that I've used, let's say in December, will only show up on, let's say, the 5th of January, things like that. So going back to Composer, I'll just show you some of the different events that can be used. So I'll just show you quickly some of the options that we have. Let's say for system event, so we could be something could be happening in Asana, and that should be the can be the trigger point. Let's say we could also look at Gmail. Let's say a new email comes in, and let's say it contains a specific file. Let's say it could be an invoice, or it could be a CSV file that needs to be processed, right? So it could also be coming off of Jira. Let's say an issue got updated in Jira. That could then be sent to other systems. It could be sent to Salesforce, to RPA. Slack could also be used to trigger RPA. So I'll be talking about the other functionalities. And then just going back to the slides. So right now, this is actually a bit outdated. As of last time I checked, there's actually not 24, but 26 connectors. So meaning we have 26 different connectors that allows you to integrate data from each other. So as I mentioned, let's say a new event can be created. Let's say in Google Calendar. Let's say a new row it's created in Google Sheets. Typically, companies use, let's say, Google Forms, right? How do we then automate the process of sending that data to some other systems? We could also automate sending messages not just to Slack, but also to Google, to Microsoft Teams. So, what if, let's say, I need to integrate with a system that doesn't have a dedicated connector? So that's actually where we have a generic HTTP connector. So it's named HTTP, so it's actually this one. So whenever you have a system that you need to connect to, one very important thing to consider here, it only supports JSON data format right now. So if you're using XML or other formats, it's actually not supported currently with Mulesoft Composer's HTTP connector. With that, why should we consider MuleSoft Composer versus the alternatives, right? So one of the most important thing is really is security, right? So many companies trust MuleSoft, and many companies trust Salesforce for the enterprises, especially if you're a large organization and you have a lot of processes in place. And even so for, let's say, government, right? It's very important that they have the proper security standards. And one of the biggest things here is actually governance, right? There are other tools like low code tools, like, for example, Zapier. It could be Make or Integromat. The question is, how can, let's say, IT be able to govern who can access these tools, right? But with Microsoft Composer, let's say Salesforce admins can actually define who are the users that can actually access and create integrations based on these. So it also has a flexible consumption-based pricing. So I'll be talking about the packages later. It's also scalable in a way that it's actually based on the endpoint platform. So it's what we call a central hub for end-to-end automation. I'll be talking about that later, because one of the packages that's available is called MuleSoft Automation. What it allows companies to do is it's basically a package of three different products. One is MuleSoft Composer. These are meant for those business users to integrate different systems. But we also have, along with that, the what we call MuleSoft RPA. Actually stands for Robotic Process Automation. What it means that traditionally, whenever we need to create an automation, and let's say if we're connecting with a system that doesn't have an API, meaning it's screen based, meaning it could be either let's say a Windows app, it could be a web app that doesn't have a user interface, or it could be reading PDF files. Normally automation gets stuck there, right? But with the RPA, that's something that can be used in order to fully automate those kinds of processes. And of course, many of you are already familiar, being in the MuleSoft ecosystem. We also have um, a light version of the endpoint platform, meaning a company would actually be getting zero point 0.5 vCores for the endpoint automate uh, within the MuleSoft automation package. All right. The question is, how do we then differentiate? When do you use MuleSoft Composer versus the endpoint platform whenever we're doing integration? So one of the biggest thing to consider is who's actually building it is, right? The main target audience for MuleSoft Composer is really the business users or Salesforce admins, meaning these are the functional people within the team. They don't necessarily have the technical training or knowledge in order to build complex integration. But for simple ones, we'd want to be able to empower them, right? So that's also very important. Are we actually connecting with, let's say, one, two, three different systems, or are we talking about 30, 50, or even 100 different systems? So very important to consider. Do we have existing connectors for what we're connecting? And if it's actually supported using the HTTP connector. If not, we may actually be forced to use the endpoint platform, right? And what's the integration complexity? Are there so many steps that it needs to go through? Do we need a robust way to be able to recover from errors or do other processes based on certain errors? Because Microsoft Composer is really geared towards non-technical users, the capabilities to be able to handle error handling is actually a bit limited. So that's also intentional though, because we want to make it as simple as we can for the business users. And how much data volume are we talking about, right? Do we need to be able to handle millions of records, or are we simply talking about probably hundreds or thousands of records, right? It really depends on, these are some of the considerations that we have to think about as architects, right? And do we actually have specific performance requirements, right? Unlike the endpoint platforms, where we actually have capabilities for vertical or horizontal scaling depending on the needs, with Mulesoft Composer, we actually don't have control over that. Right? So we have different limitations because it's actually simply relying on one specific um, instance. Right now, I believe we don't have visibility in terms of the processing size and the RAM allocated. So this is something that we hope to get later on. But right now, this is not something documented. One very important to consider too is data residency requirements, right? So thus, do we actually have a MuleSoft Composer instance that that's supported um, within the country that you need to reside on? We have servers in the US, in Europe. I believe there may be other instances, but it's very important to consider the data residency requirements. So what are some of the top use cases for this? At least for the Salesforce audience, it's actually can be used for Salesforce to org sync, meaning for let's say a company like Google, they actually have hundreds of different Salesforce instances. These can be used, for example, to um, to move data from one Salesforce org to another. Let's say as soon as an account gets created here, I also want that to be copied to these other Salesforce instances. And for business users, it's very important to be able to connect with NetSuite or QuickBooks, right? Many cases, Salesforce is used for the sales process, but for the accounting, they may also be using NetSuite or QuickBooks. And then for integration with Slack or Twilio, so it can be used for either notifying people or sending messages, or some companies also can use this for what we call case swarming, meaning let's say there could be a case in Salesforce and we want to be able to send that case details to a certain team for them to be able to work together in achieving in solving that specific problem. And then this can also be used for cases where we want to be able to lower the number of cases within Salesforce. So if we can actually help or integrate with different tools, it could be in the form of chatbots. There are many ways that we can actually use this to solve problems without necessarily involving a human being to deal with those, mainly because of the expense, right? So far, any questions on these? Just wanted to check.
No, Joey. Actually, I don't see any questions coming around. So,
All right.
if I see any questions, I'll pause you.
I'll go ahead then. So, what are some of the considerations that we have to keep in mind when using Mulesoft Composer? So, right now, whenever you're creating a Mulesoft Composer flow, it's not yet possible to trigger it off of what we call Salesforce flows directly or using platform events. The workaround here is that we can actually use the Salesforce connector to listen for new records or updated records. One very important to take note, this Salesforce connector is actually running on a polling base. It's actually polling, meaning it's actually checking every 10 minutes or up to every 10 minutes, meaning it's actually using the API calls to check, hey, do we have any updated records or newly created, right? So you have to consider that if you need something that's near real time or real time requirements, right? Also, we also cannot directly reuse composer flows yet, meaning, remember we created a flow earlier, right? It's not yet currently possible to, similar to a subflow, to basically call that, right? in terms of orchestrating things. So one workaround is, again, we can use, for example, custom objects. We can create a custom object record and then have that trigger the second flow or third flow that it needs to run. But in terms of directly concept orchestrating it, if you want something real time, it's not yet possible. And then it's not yet possible to schedule it to run on a specific time of the day. So many of you may be familiar with a scheduler within Mulesoft. Um, the thing is, it currently does not support or cron scheduling, meaning you cannot tell it to run. Let's say I want it to run every day at 9 a.m. You can only specify that, okay, I want it to run. Let's see. Let me open up this one. So you'll notice here, the main options that we have is either 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Let me edit this. Every day. There's not really an option to tell it, hey, I want this to run every day at 9 a.m. In order to do that, if we have that requirement, is we actually need to go in at 9 a.m. and activate it during that time. All right. And then going back here, there's actually no concept of lower environments yet. So we need, of course, we need some testing, right? The works within Composer Flow is you actually have to create a connection to a sandbox, meaning it could be a Salesforce sandbox or some other sandbox environment. But that's where you do the testing. Once you're ready to actually move it to production, what you can do is what we call change connection, meaning from here, we have this option of changing the connection. We can then change it to a production instance. That's why it's very important for us to have proper naming convention. Be able to understand based on the name alone. Are we connecting to a Salesforce production instance? Are we connecting to a sandbox? Which specific sandbox is it? Is it the dev, the full sandbox, and things like that?
Hi, Joey.
Right?
Sorry to interrupt. We have one
Yep.
question in the chat window. So
Yes.
it says how to handle errors if it comes in the flow. It may be a connection downtime or data mismatch or any type of errors.
All right. Considering that we have limited capabilities in terms of error handling, right? What happens typically in a flow is that it actually stops it, wherever it is that that actually encounters an error. So there's not much capabilities in terms of try catch mechanisms. You'll notice there's actually we don't actually have that much options, mainly because this is targeted towards simplifying integration. But of course, we still need to be able to handle errors, right? Within flows, the thing about this is whenever we have run history, it actually will tell us if there are any errors during that flow. So we can go in and fix that. One other thing that you can do is whenever you need to debug something, you can, for example, create a spreadsheet, let's say in a Google Sheet, and send the data there whenever you, before you run something, so that you have at least a log of what you sent. That way you can investigate further. So those are some of the common ways to try to debug things. But if you're talking about being able to handle errors in a way that try catch mechanism and being able to to be able to program how it will behave based on certain conditions, based on certain errors, we actually don't have that yet. All right. Any questions?
Uh, how to test performance of the flow.
All right. In terms of performance, one very important thing to take note, this is actually not meant for really large data sets. So in a way, in terms of testing, you really just have to trigger whatever it is. So, for example, you have a trigger wherein it's actually checking for new records. Remember, I can actually create a new flow. based on, let's say, a Salesforce record being created or updated. So let me show that. In terms of testing, you really just have to trigger it. So let's say my basis would be a Salesforce record getting new record, and then let's say it could be a creation of new account. You want then to be able to trigger that. One very important thing to take note about this, you want to be very careful about creating flows, especially if it's listening for data within Salesforce. You don't want these to be accidentally running or triggering and accidentally, right? Because at least for Salesforce, it's common for companies to have large teams, and there may be cases wherein, let's say, you want something to run whenever a lead is created, or you may or may not want that because sometimes there could be a marketing event and somebody could be importing 1,000 leads. The question is, do we want to trigger that or not? You'd want to be more specific in terms of when you'd want to be creating or automating that process. Otherwise, that may actually use up all of your credits, right? So in terms of testing, you really just have to do whatever it is it's doing. And then tools wise, I mean, same thing with whatever tools that we can use for performance testing. The thing is, there's no easy way to track the performance. You really just have to see how well it performs, right? And unfortunately, we don't have visibility in terms of the performance, like the memory usage and usage in the back end. We don't have that visibility. All right. Any others for now?
No, no. You can continue. Yeah.
All right. So, and also, there's no concept of versioning. Some may be familiar with the Salesforce flows. Basically, each flow can have multiple versions. In this case, it's very important to actually have proper naming convention to indicate which version it's for. So because all we have here is being able to clone an existing one and create new versions out of that. So that's why you'll it's very important for you to name, is it version 1, version 2, version 3, and if it's connecting to a sandbox or a production, right? So this is the main option that we have. This is meant because it's trying to make it simple as possible, right? And then very important thing to consider for architects is it actually uses a Salesforce API call at each step. So if it's connecting to Salesforce, so getting data from Salesforce, updating a record is actually using one API call. So if you're handling a large number of data, very important to consider that. And as mentioned earlier, it's not really real time. If we're listening for changes in Salesforce, it gets pulled up to every 10 minutes, meaning you have between 1 seconds to 600 seconds to actually check when it triggers, right? So when is it not best to use a Mulesoft Composer? So it's not best when we need to integrate with on-premise systems. So whenever we need to implement complex integration or data transformation that requires code, it actually doesn't have that capability built in. If we need to deal with a large volume of data or bulk, right? Let's say if we need to have ETL functionality. And then question is, how do we get access, right? Some bad news for those that are not part of Salesforce or MuleSoft partners. It's actually quite hard to actually get access to that. Good news is that you can actually sign up for a free 2-hour workshop to get access to a training org for free. So this is actually the URL for it. So feel free to scan it. I believe last time I checked, it's actually full in terms of the workshop. But keep checking this specific link because I know they're actually planning on adding more workshops. So what happens in this workshop is that they'll go through some of the capabilities of the MuleSoft automation. And part of that is actually you'll get hands-on experience in a Salesforce org that has access to MuleSoft Composer. So you can literally play around with the capabilities and create different integrations. With that, you can also learn more about Mulesoft Composer now using the Trailhead link we have here. So for those that are collecting badges, this is something very important now that we have a lot of integration. So you'll be able to see a lot of your MuleSoft credentials or certifications within the Trailblazer.me page. And this basically serves as a resume in a sense for all of your Salesforce related accomplishments. So now the question is, what options do we have in terms of being able to purchase this, right? So for um, for MuleSoft automation, we actually have this package called MuleSoft Automate. So it includes 57,000 credits for that can be used either for RPA or Composer. So each credit can either be equivalent to 2 RPA bot minutes, 100 API calls, or 50 Composer tasks. Remember, each item eh, in that specific action is considered one composer task. So if you're running it on 50 different records, that's equivalent to 50 composer tasks. And it's very important to understand that we have um, three main connectors as a part of the package. So we have Salesforce, Tableau, and Slack. And a company can actually choose three additional composer connectors depending on their choice. And it's very important. This also includes an endpoint platform light version. Means that a company can actually get access to the endpoint platform for zero point 0.5 vCores. They can use it for, of course, 0.5 of zero point 0.1 vCore. So it's basically somewhat like an introductory for companies to be able to adopt MuleSoft as part of their package, right? And of course, later on, they may need more and they can then just get more add-ons depending on what they need. And then, assuming that the company only needs MuleSoft Composer, there's actually two options. Either go with $27,000 package or $57,000. So it includes either 250,000 tasks, take notice per year, or 2.5 million tasks with free or unlimited connectors. All right. With that, if you're interested in learning more, make sure to join the Trailblazer community group because this is actually where most of the different community managers like Isabella Navarro and different product managers are actually looking into to make sure that everybody is supported, especially since it's actually a fairly new product. Companies are adopting this. It's actually very good to be able to get direct access to the different product managers. And with that, thank you for having me. Do we have any questions?
No questions, Joey. I see in the chat window, but yeah, thank you very much for this very powerful and informative session. So I hope, like for all the participants and even who are going to see the recordings, it will be very useful for them too. Uh, I mean, yeah. So really, thanks for your time and appreciate your efforts. Yeah,
Sure. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate the time. Hopefully,
yeah.
for many of you, this is something that basically a new tool to consider. This is something that you can play around with. But for many developers and MuleSoft developers and architects, I know it can be boring, mainly because of how much less you can do. But at the same time, it's really meant to lessen the load on the technical teams, right? So if there's something that business users or functional users can actually go ahead and develop themselves, that would be best, right?
Okay. Thanks, Joey. So with this, we'll quickly switch to the trivia round. So how it's gonna happen is like we gonna ask three questions. Okay, including options. So I am going to post first question in the chat window, and then whoever answers it first, like will get a training voucher. So we will distribute via email to you. So we will just note your email IDs and okay. So let me just put the first question in chat window. So just be attentive. There you go. Okay, so the question is how many Mulesoft Composer connectors are currently available? So I hope it was covered very well in the session, and it was. So I see the very first and the correct answer is 26, which is given by Prashant Kumar. So Prashant, please provide your email ID in the chat window so that we can just make a note of it. And unfortunately, you're not allowed to participate in other questions. Okay, so I'm going to pose the second question now. Here you go. Okay, so one use of automation is equivalent to how many RPA API calls or minutes? So the correct answer is 2 RPA bot minutes. Uh, so it's been correctly. The first person is Simendra Singh. So Simendra, please provide your email ID so that we can make a note of it. Okay. Thank you, Simendra. I'm going to pose the third and the last question for today. Uh, how many vehicles is included in the base Mules of automation package? 1, 2, 5, 0.5, or none? So the correct answer for this is 0.5. And I see the first one to provide the correct answer is Saumendra Mohanty, option C. So Saumendra, please provide your email ID. Yeah, I got that. Okay, thank you. So with this, we are about to close the session, but you will soon get the feedback link in your emails. So please do provide your suggestions, feedbacks, how you like the session, like whether it could have been improved in any of our hospitality, anything related to that, so that we can improve that in our next sessions. And yeah, have a good luck and have a good weekend. Happy New Year to all of you. Thanks, Joy. Like, yeah, special thanks to you for conducting this.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Have a good day. Bye.
Okay. Thank you.